You can usually find a video game's personality within its visual style and art direction. With me being a huge proponent of art and animation, especially 2D, I'm super biased towards anything with an aesthetic that stands out from the crowd. In today's video, I'll be reviewing 3 titles I've recently enjoyed that, in my opinion, share common ground in showcasing the appeal in 2D video games. I've had my eye on Hasht Blood for a real good while. That fluid animation was enough to get me hooked immediately, so best believe I bought this game as quickly as I could. For the plot of the game, you play as Becky Brewster, who's getting ready to start her life in high school in a new town. All the while, you got these creatures of the night stirring up trouble in the background. As these monsters continue to reveal themselves in Becky's everyday life, she learns more of her connection and calling to face these foes and defeat the big bad calling the shots behind the scenes. In regards to the story and characters, it's pretty inoffensive. I can't say I had a huge investment in the majority of the characters, with my favorite being Christopherson. The writing feels appropriate for a usual Cartoon Network style show with some self-awareness, some bits of drama, pretty much hitting beats you'd expect. Nothing super deep in a story-driven sense, but not so bad I hate anything about the plot or characters. For the world design of the game, it has an obvious homage to Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. You go about locations talking with NPCs, finding collectibles, and obtaining fetch quest type missions. From the lens of a smartphone, you keep track of your missions and items in a nice, orderly fashion. There are puzzles in the game as well, and they weren't crazy challenging, so I can't say many of them were really enjoyable, only serviceable. There's a sewer system you use to fast travel later on in the game, which is a nice touch even with the spacing and grinding to use it. I recommend it though, especially if you plan to find all the collectibles later on in the game. Now, focusing on the mechanics of Hasht Blood, the game feels pretty decent. The UI of the phone serves a purpose of using the camera to take photos of useful clues you find along the way. You start out throwing stray hands, boxing enemies until you obtain the hockey stick named Brenda that heavily evens out the playing field for the game. There are certain ways to beat enemies that has you make use of the arsenal you have and shows distinction in enemy types, which is kinda neat. The homage of Legend of Zelda is worn on a sleeve, honestly, down to the function and variety of items such as the umbrella being a shield, a literal hook shot, pencils used for long range attacks, and cherry bombs to blow It could be patched in the future, of course, but some hitboxes were pretty jacked up, felt shallow, or straight up non-existent. Considering some tweaking needed for the game's mechanics is not the weakest point for me. I believe that falls onto the music and some of the sound design. Nothing from the soundtrack is really memorable, and it kinda lacks real thematic flair to me. I also feel that even though the reference of classic cartoon sounds are used in the game, it wasn't too great for me either, mainly in the cutscenes though. I'm being a bit picky since I love me some cartoon sound design, but it just needed a bit more direction. Now to the real selling point of the game, which is the energetic, high caliber of animation used throughout. Seeing the initial design and version of the game it was before, I really admire the progress and dedication the team had to bringing this game to life. There were points where I would just move around to see every unique frame Becky was able to do in the game. The animation and homage to the era of 90s cartoons, with support and polish of modern tools, really gives this game a unique personality and makes it stand out. I can say, given the chance to be a series, this can actually thrive in my opinion. Just flesh out and pace the characters and plot a bit more, of course. With some of the initial issues and kinks to getting a possible patch in the future, this game will feel a lot better than it does at the moment. But for now, I can still enjoy the presentation and the decent gameplay. For all my Legend of Zelda and 90s cartoon fans, you can definitely get a nice experience from this title.
I'm a different duck now. I haven't had a slice of bread in weeks. You have to believe me! have you speaking to the duck detective?
Duck Detective: The Secret Salami is a random impulse purchase I made after watching a recent Nintendo Indie World. On the nose and absurd humor games make for a more enjoyable experience if you want to take it a bit easier from the hair-losing, stress-inducing games you may be playing on the regular. In this title, you play as the Duck Detective, who's down on his money and his luck.
Where did all my money go?
He receives a phone call for a case happening at a bus station where one of the workers had their lunch stolen, and as simple as silly as that sounds, there's looking to be more to this case than the Duck Detective first believed. All these characters have some part in finding out what was the purpose of the lunch being stolen and the mastermind behind it all.
And guess who deduced said long story? The one and only Duck Detective.
Read the room.
For this kind of game, the cast and story have to be pretty engaging, so having voice actors really helped the game in that regard. Props to them. You've got the Duck Detective, Laura, Freddy, Manfred, Sophie, Boris, Margaret, and Rufus. I think almost each character was pretty enjoyable, with my favorite being the main man himself, and my least favorite being Boris. The story was very unserious and the writing was well aware of it.
I'll need to remember to write everything down in my deductions.
I don't want to spoil too much, but I like the agency you get in the game while still fitting the plot. Since this is a point-and-click game, there needs to be a solid flow of clues being implemented and found in a cohesive manner while also being in a tight-knit location. And I believe the game did the job pretty well. There's reasonable challenge to the problem, so it gives a good sense of accomplishment after finding hints and answers to progress in the game. The UI being a notepad fits perfectly, of course, for, as a detective, clues are well kept and simple. The gameplay is pretty straightforward with its mechanics. Just point and click. Whatever clues you find, it's up to you to organize them ad-lib style to find answers to the case. It has a good sense of agency, and thematically, the magnifying glass tool is great, giving actual distinct detail when you zoom in on items and characters. Also, you can quack. Now, covering the aspect of sound design and music for the game is nothing you can really complain about. It has that solid detective noir tone, so nothing too crazy, but it's still pretty good.
This office looks like it'll worsen my depression.
Also, jazz is my favorite genre of music, so I could be showing my bias here. Can't really find anything to offend me. I really like the overall look and theme of the game. The old-fashioned detective aesthetic with a tongue-in-cheek approach, the cute anthropomorphic cast, on top of a low-budget feel of the character graphics in a 3D setting, gives this game a very entertaining presentation.
Look, you should have told me you're the Duck Detective.
What are you? I'm a duck. I'm wearing a trench coat.
The tropes of a comedy mystery type story were well met with a lighthearted delivery, a very cozy and fun style. All in all, I can say I had a fun experience with this mystery game and its goofy cast of characters. It's a nice little recommendation for all you point-and-click, puzzle-loving gamers. Alright, now this game is something else. I caught wind of Haunty just by looking around on Steam. When I found this page, I got hooked after watching his trailer and ended up waiting for that day one release. In this game, you play as Haunty, a ghost in the afterlife with no recollection of who they were before. Along the way, you meet Chris, an angelic being who seems to know how to help you find the answers you're looking for. When you reach a tower that starts to bring you up to a holy light, you're brought back down by these chains. You find out that the only way to break free of them is to traverse through this plane of existence, gathering stars that will help you progress towards your goal of ascension. I believe this game worked well with its premise. I felt the writing did a good job of laying out the message in mind for the player to be engaged. The characters were effective at being cute plot devices, but I wasn't really hooked on them personality-wise, though there isn't anything wrong with how they chose to move the story. Without exposing too much of the story, when you collect stars throughout the game, they help give glimpses into Hauntie's life before passing. And though it can drag on to some, I didn't necessarily mind the slow pace. I think the tone kind of calls for it. I was invested and curious to see where this game would lead, and I wasn't disappointed. Now, the first thing that popped into my mind was Super Mario Odyssey with this game's design. The UI was unapologetic in its reference to Odyssey, from the collection of stars in each location, the unique currency in the locations as well, and even to the interface when you lose in the game. Now, in terms of pacing with the story, I didn't mind, but pacing as far as level design, it can feel like a lot. I honestly don't remember if there was a fast travel at the time of writing this, but it would definitely benefit from it. The challenge in this game was fair, honestly. Nothing made me stress out, but I kind of jumped the gun when I play games, so most of the faults were on me. In regards to the gameplay, again, paying homage to Super Mario Odyssey, the mechanics in this game allow you to possess objects, enemies, and other ghosts as well. It makes sense thematically. Why wouldn't a ghost have the ability to possess something or someone? But the way you possess in this game is definitely different from Super Mario Odyssey. The function of a twin stick shooter is implemented, and you use what is called essence to either shoot at random objects or possessible objects. When possessing enemies, you find a variety of skills and weapons they have to help move further along in the game. There's a good amount of enemy variation as well, so you'll find some fun in using their powers. Another major highlight of this title is the soundtrack. I admire the sound design as well, but the music was so solid, I gotta give Michael Kirby Ward props for striking the right chord in this game. My two favorite tracks were Haunty and Home to Home. I honestly have huge respect for the art style and direction of this game. The use of 2D and 3D assets clash in an excellent way, with some use of frame rate distinction between characters, items, and environments. This gloomy tone of being in the afterlife is balanced with the cute character designs, looking as if they popped right out of someone's Inktober sketchbook, along with some splashes of color for different locations. I really enjoyed playing this title. The artistic effort put into the development with a decent layout of mechanics worked well together. I was engaged with the plot and enjoyed what they aimed for. Definitely a good choice for those who like 3D Mario type games at a slow, cozy pace. These three titles have their own 2D charm I really appreciate, be it with Hasht Blood's lively and nostalgic cartoon approach, the Duck Detective's storybook cutout style, like a Paper Mario kind of vibe, and Hauntie's hand-drawn notebook aesthetic. I can say they gave me some cool experiences, and I hope they caught your attention as well. Here's my personal score set for each of them. Do you see yourself giving them a shot later on? Let me know down in the comments below. I'm open to feedback and your personal perspective on these games. Until then, stay tuned for the next set of reviews.